Which NFL teams will stumble, fall, and regress in 2025? Welcome, football fans, to another NFL BLV prediction video. In this video, I predict the teams that will be way worse in 2025 than they were in 2024. These teams will come crashing back down to earth. If that sounds good, Gronk, spike the like button, don't be a jabroni, and subscribe to the BLV for more NFL videos just like this all off season long. And you know what to do. Get in the comments and let me know. Do you agree or do you disagree? I'm sure there will be fan bases that their teams are in this video that don't necessarily agree. So if you disagree, let me know why. Let's kick off this video with a team that I'm very pleased to include as a team, the primary team that I believe will fall off the face of the planet in 2025, and that team is none other than the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins will suck again. Yes, that's right. In 2025, the Dolphins will fall. That is my prediction. The Dolphins will no longer be competing for the AFC East, although they never won it. They will not be competing because I think they will be closer to the bottom of the division than the top. Miami, there is a lot wrong with this team. The culture, the physicality, and even the talent has taken a dip. First of all, we have to rely on Tua Tagovailoa to stay healthy. Good luck with that. And you have to rely on him to stay healthy behind an offensive line that no longer has Teron Armstead. This Miami offensive line on paper is one of the worst in football. Austin Jackson and Patrick Paul at tackle. Good luck. James Daniels coming off a torn Achilles. Aaron Brewer? Are you kidding me? This team is going to win 8, 9, 10, 11 games? Yeah, no. I understand that Dolphins fans will say that Tua was hurt for a certain amount of games. They would have been better. They would have made the playoffs, blah, 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 blah. You really think he's actually going to play the entire season? You actually think this team is going to be able to play in December and January and actually win games? Come on, Dolphins fans. I tell you this every single season like it's clockwork. Your team is soft. Your team is built on speed, and once the snow and the cold come, they falter because they're soft as Charmin. Now you've got Tyreek Hill, your best player over the last couple of years. Not even sure if he really wants to be there. Then you have Jalen Ramsey, who probably won't be there. I can't even really tell you if you have starting caliber corners or safeties besides Jalen Ramsey. And like I said, he'll probably be gone. Your front seven is pretty good. I'll give you that. You got a pass rush. You got Zach Sealer. You drafted Kenneth Grant. I like what you did there. And I actually don't hate what you did in the draft. You tried to get more physical, bigger, right? All that sort of stuff. But this defense is not going to be above average. This offense has a very weak offensive line, and it feels like Tyreek Hill is dwindling. And Jalen Waddle, good, talented player, but he is not reliable to me. I don't know, man. This Dolphins team just feels very Miami mid in 2025. So I think Miami will definitely be worse in 2025. You include the Patriots on the rise. You include having to play a second place schedule instead of maybe a third or a fourth place schedule, playing the entire AFC North, the big bully physical teams. Good luck. Next, the Kansas City Chiefs. We started off with a bang on the BLV. The Dolphins and the Chiefs. Now, the Chiefs are going to be worse because they went 15-2 and they went to the Super Bowl. And honestly, I don't think any person that watched the Chiefs last year thought they were actually as good as 15-2. They won so many close games. It was absolutely ludicrous. For the first time in my life, it felt like the NFL was actually scripted the amount of times the Chiefs won a game where they shouldn't have won a game. Like, it was absolutely absurd. And that team that made the Super Bowl, it was proven by Philadelphia in that Super Bowl that they didn't deserve to be there. Because honestly, they didn't. A Super Bowl hangover for this team is very likely considering the age of some of their players, considering the wear and tear of some of their roster, and just how frequently they've been deep into the playoffs. It begins to wear on you mentally and physically. It's hard to have that chip on your shoulder year after year after year. Eventually, you're going to wear down and you're going to wear out and you're going to have to reset. This is a team that faces the NFC East that I think is a much more capable division this year. So they take on the Eagles. Good luck. The Commanders, the Cowboys, and then the Giants. Then they face the AFC South, which is actually a pretty easy schedule for them, right? But they do have to face the Texans. The Colts sometimes can get them every once in a while. And then they play Buffalo, Baltimore, and the Lions as their first place schedule. And they play in a really difficult division. The Broncos twice, the Chargers twice, and even the Raiders now are pretty capable. So their division got a lot stronger, in my opinion, this offseason. And they do play that top competition, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, the Detroit Lions. They play a Texans team that will want revenge. And I look at them and I just say, they're not going to win 15 games. I think they will make the playoffs. I think that they will win like 11 or 12. But they just can't be as fluky or fortunate or as lucky as they were last year. And you're looking at this team, and I could see where the offense maybe improved because Rashee Rice should be healthy and returning, and their receiving core is pretty formidable and strong. But Kelsey is looking kind of washed. The end of his days, this could be his final season. The offensive line, they obviously tried to make some improvements here, but we will not know what it looks like without Joe Thuney until we actually see it. I'm still not sure their running game is all that good. Patrick Mahomes is going to have to prove to me that he's still elite because he has not played that way the last couple of years. And their defense, I think, is good, but they certainly don't have a dominant defensive line by any means. If Chris Jones does take a step back, then it's a little concerning for them. And they did lose their leader at safety in Justin Reed. So yeah, they have Andy Reid, they have Steve Spagnuolo, and they have the constant winning and the constant backbone of Patrick Mahomes and this dynasty. But it feels like this could be a year for them coming off a Super Bowl loss, where just like when they lost to the Bucs, but maybe even more severe this year, they do have a little bit of a dip in terms of that inconsistency, the up and down and all that sort of stuff. And we'll see how the locker room takes this Super Bowl hangover potential, okay? So I just don't see them winning 15 games. Maybe I'm crazy, but I have the Chiefs as being way worse in 2025. The New Orleans Saints. I know they won 5 games last year, but this feels like a bottom-out year for the New Orleans Saints. Because, first of all, you have a rookie coaching staff. So there is more reason to bottom out. There's more reason to not be desperately holding on to some sort of past that was there with Sean Payton and Drew Brees. Now it's a new era of Kellen Moore, right? Dennis Allen was still a part of that old days, okay? That last regime, that Sean Payton era. They're sort of resetting in New Orleans slowly. And Kellen Moore, he's a rookie. He's going to make a lot of mistakes. Their defensive coordinator, they're going to make mistakes, right? They're going to make mistakes. And you look at the Saints and you say, who is the quarterback? Like, is Derek Carr playing this year? Is Derek Carr starting this year? Is Derek Carr the guy for them this year? Or is it going to be Tyler Shuck, a rookie that not a lot of people believe can really play at a high level in the NFL, right? He's actually an older prospect, but sort of youthful in terms of experience. He only really had one college season where he truly actually played. I like his talent, but he doesn't have a lot to support him, to be honest. I mean, he has a couple talented receivers in Shaheed Olave and maybe even Brandon Cooks, but Alvin Kamara is getting old. The run game is probably not going to be great. And the offensive line, they lost Ryan Ramczyk, their borderline Hall of Fame right tackle. They're going to be shuffling around names like Penning to guard from tackle, Fuaga from the left to the right, and then they're adding a rookie, Kelvin Banks. So that is going to be an experience on the offensive line. And I felt like if Kubiak did anything well last year with the Saints, it felt like he did do well with the offensive line that was given to him, and they still suffered on that front because of the injuries and because of the shuffling and things like that. So it could be another rough year across the offensive line. If you add that to Tyler Shuck, Spencer Rattler, Jake Haener, these guys are just going to multiply that situation in a poor fashion. And we know how Derek Carr plays under pressure. So this offense could just be an experience in a negative way. And then defensively, they have a bunch of old guys leading the way and being asked to be their top producers. Guys like Tyrann Mathieu, guys like Cameron Jordan, Demario Davis. They have probably the worst cornerback depth chart in the entire NFL. I don't know a single soul that they can cover in man-to-man. And their pass rush isn't much better. I mean, Chase Young is not some sort of absolute edge dominant threat. Carl Granderson is solid, but I mean, the defense is also bottom 10 in my opinion. So I just don't see how this team goes out there and wins a lot of games because I don't think they have a dominant unit. I'm uncertain about the quarterback. I'm not sure what to make of the coaching situation. And it just feels like naturally the Saints need a bad season. They need like a 3 or 4 win season. So I know they only won 5 last year, but that was also with Derek Carr missing much of the season, right? And them starting off the season so successfully and just completely falling off after that. So that could actually continue to derail their franchise into 2025. So that's why I think the Saints will be arguing in position for a top 2-3 draft pick next year. The Washington Commanders, I think from a record perspective, might be much worse in 2025. Now, this is a team that I think a lot of people would argue against because, last year they took that big leap where they were the Cinderella team that made the NFC Championship and had a miracle playoff run, beating the Bucs in a close off-the-bar field goal win. Then they beat the Lions, which nobody really saw coming in Detroit, and it was kind of in a dominant fashion, and then they kind of got dominated in Philadelphia in the NFC Championship. But the Commanders, the interesting thing to me is that I felt like, yes, you could argue they improved their offense, which was already the strength of their team, right? Laramie Tunsil at left tackle, drafting Connerly from Oregon. Maybe he slides in at guard to start or something like that. Maybe even right tackle. They did add Deebo Samuel to complement Terry McLaurin, although I would say that Deebo, to me, is somewhat washed. Like, I don't think he's the same player he used to be, but I have argued as well that he's in a great spot for him in Cliff Kingsbury's offense. But that's the other thing. Now a lot of teams have tape on Jaden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury's new offense with Jaden Daniels. So now defensive coaches have studied for an entire summer how to slow down Jaden Daniels and how to slow down Cliff Kingsbury. How does Cliff adjust? Because that's been a problem for him over the years. And how does Jaden Daniels play in year 2? It's not crazy to suggest that a great rookie season can fall back down to earth in year 2. We saw CJ Stroud do a similar thing in Houston. They survived because they had a great defense in Houston, right? Washington does not, which really concerns me. Their edge rush is really poor. Like, I would argue it's probably the least dominant pass rush in football. Like, Dorrance Armstrong is your number one edge player. That's a scary thought. This team, if you combine all their edge rushers together, had less sacks than Trey Hendrickson. They lost Jonathan Allen. They lost Dante Fowler. Now, they did try to add some pieces for depth and for numbers and volume, but I don't see a single stud up front for this team. Daron Payne, but he's not really the pass rushing type. Wagner's ancient. Luvu's good, but their safeties are not. Their corners might be a bit better. We'll see what Marshawn Lattimore brings if he's healthy. I like the Amos pickup, but I just don't see how this defense is any better than like a bottom 10 unit in the league. I really don't. So if they're constantly chasing on the scoreboard, or they're constantly having to win shootouts, and defenses have adjusted to Jaden Daniels, it's going to be difficult for them to win 12 games again. Like, maybe they win 9 or 10, but 12 with this unbalanced of a roster feels unlikely. They also play a really difficult schedule. I mean, they play the NFC North and the AFC West. That's arguably the best division in the NFC and the best division in the AFC. And these are teams that can take advantage of you if you're unbalanced on one side of the ball, or if you're too reliant on your quarterback, which maybe the Commanders are. They also play Miami, Atlanta, and Seattle, which are not pushover teams. So I just look at their schedule and I say, I don't see 12, 13 wins again. I don't see the positive regression. I see the negative regression for this team, especially because they won so many fluky ways last year. Hail Marys, doink kicks, last minute miracles, Jalen Hurts getting hurt, like random stuff. So I just see this team just naturally falling a little bit. That doesn't really mean that I don't still see them as a playoff team, but it definitely feels like this is a team that is the predictable Cinderella that becomes a regression candidate in year 2 for Jaden Daniels. Next, we're not going to like this one across the BLV community most likely, but I have to be real with you guys. The Detroit Lions. Look, the Detroit Lions won 15 games last year, and they were the number 1 seed in the NFC. And they lost coach after coach after coach after coach. They were absolutely raided. Their coaching staff has been picked to pieces by the NFL. That is a brain drain that is hard to overcome, especially when you lose both your offensive and defensive coordinator. Ask the Eagles from 2022 to 2023. The difference is that the Lions, they had all these injuries and they didn't make the most of their real opportunity to get to the Super Bowl last year and maybe win the Super Bowl if they were healthy. They may have missed their opportunity. That being said, the Lions will be healthier this year most likely, and they do still have a lot of talent, but 15 wins inside a division with the Vikings, the Packers, and the Bears. The Vikings got better on paper. The Bears definitely got better on paper, and the Packers are a solid football team. And then on top of that, they play a first place schedule. They play the Bills, right? And, you know, they played the Bills and the Rams last year. And this is the point I want to make. Last year, they really didn't play a ton of elite teams in the NFL. They kind of feasted on their own division, which is now stronger this year. And they beat the Rams in week 1 without Puka Nacua, if I'm not mistaken. And they lost to the Bills. They actually didn't play Baltimore, Kansas City, Philadelphia. They didn't play Washington until the playoffs, right? So this was a team that did kind of benefit from the familiarity of their division, dominating that, and then not playing a lot of really great teams. If you actually look at the Lions' schedule this year, it could be a little bit more difficult, right? So they do play the Ravens this year. They do play the Chiefs this year. They do play the Bengals this year, right? They play the Eagles and the Commanders this year. So there's more of an outside kind of competition that I didn't really feel like they faced last season. And they still play a team like the Bucs, who seemingly kind of have their number as well. So, interesting. I'm just saying the Lions are talented. The Lions still got a lot of good things going. Great young skill positions in their prime. Jared Goff playing the best football of his career. But what will Jared Goff look like without Ben Johnson? That's a question. Ben Johnson, I believe, one of the best play callers in football, right? Subtle things like Taylor Decker and Frank Ragnow getting a little bit older. Their defense, maybe not truly having a shutdown corner. That could be a little concerning. Their pass rush maybe being a little too Aiden Hutchinson reliant. There are certainly questions about this roster and this team. And how will Dan Campbell fare without his two main men on both sides of the ball? That's a big question. And with Dan Campbell, if things start to go wrong, will he get overly reactive and emotional? Or will he stand firm and stoic and be able to be this guy that can lead this team back from the dungeons? So, a lot of questions with Detroit. I could easily see them being still a 13-win team. 15 is asking for a lot, though. I mean, it really is. It's probably more likely that they win like 11 and they're in the playoffs and they're still very competitive, but they're not quite as dominant as they were last season because they just lost so many coaches, so much brain power. The Green Bay Packers. So Lions fans will probably be happier now that I included the Packers on this list as well. I just think that it's going to be really difficult for the same thing to happen in the NFC North as last year, where three teams were so damn dominant. I mean, the Packers easily could have won 12 games last year if they would have really, truly tried at the end of the season. And the Vikings, somehow, I almost included the Vikings. The Vikings won 14 games last year. The only reason I didn't include the Vikings, which they're very likely to not win 14 games, but where I could see the Vikings improving is in the playoffs, because I think their defense and their line of scrimmage play is actually even better. And J.J. McCarthy, by the playoffs, might actually become a better player than Sam Darnold. I wouldn't doubt that either. So I feel like if the Vikings can find their way back to the playoffs, their upside might actually be more extreme. But they are more volatile, perhaps, this year than last year. So the Vikings I decided not to include, and I decided to go with the Packers. Because they were 11-6, but when you dive into the Packers last year, they really didn't beat any good teams. I mean, the teams that they beat that I would consider good were the Rams and the Texans. And in both of those games, the Rams and the Texans were completely derailed by injuries. The Rams had none of their receivers, right? And remember, the Rams were a lot worse at the beginning of the year because their defense was extremely young and they were growing. And they got a lot better by the end of the year. And this game was like week 5 or so. They beat the Texans in Green Bay barely without Tank Dell, Nico Collins, some of their defensive players as well. So that was kind of, fortunate scheduling spots. And they had that across the schedule. Like, they played the worst team in the NFL last year at the peak of their worst play. The New Orleans Saints with their third string quarterback and no playmakers. It was an absolute massacre. They beat the crap out of the Niners without their quarterback, their running back, a bunch of players. They just got a bunch of great scheduling spots last year. Miami late in the season in the snow instead of in Miami in the warm early in the year. There were just a lot of examples of that. And they really didn't play well against their division either, which is concerning, right? They didn't play well against Minnesota. I believe they got swept, right? Detroit, they didn't fare that well either. So you're going to have to beat the teams in your division. And I feel like this is a team that didn't match up well with the division last year. I am concerned for their hopes in 2025. You also look at, could Alexander still be traded? Because if so, the secondary, the cornerback position is pretty thin and not great. Their pass rush concerns me entering 2025. They're going to have to get more out of a guy like Lucas Van Ness. Their offense will be without Christian Watson. Matthew Golden will be replacing him and not really adding on to what they already had. And I just don't know. Jordan Love is like solid, but I'm not like sold that he's a superstar. Matt LaFleur is a great coach, and maybe he shocks me here, but I think that they're due for like an 8 or 9, 7 win season just because like the Bears got so much better. The Lions are still so talented. The Vikings have so much talent. And I mean, the NFC as a whole, that schedule as a whole is going to be a lot more difficult. So, yeah, the Packers just feel like a team that will take a slight dip this year because I didn't really buy what I saw last year. And then the final team that I believe will be way worse in 2025 is the Indianapolis Colts. And I feel like I'm hating on the Colts a little bit, but honestly, a lot of it just has to do with the quarterback position. Like the Colts have probably the worst quarterback position among all 32 NFL teams, unless you include Derek Carr as an injury and then Tyler Shucks the starter. But I feel like the Colts, Anthony Richardson is bad at football. He can't complete passes. He has zero rhythm. And without any rhythm or timing, you can't possess the ball and you can't dictate the terms. On top of that, right? Daniel Jones is not the answer. So Colts fans might try to sell me on the roster talent at running back, wide receiver, improvement at corner, defensive line. I understand all that, guys. I get it. Tyler Warren at tight end. Yeah, I understand. Shane Steichen can draw up a play. I'm not sold on him as an overall head coach, though. But as a play caller, I agree. He's talented. Now, the reason I think the Colts will regress is first, if Anthony Richardson plays, he's not a quarterback to me that's going to win you 10 games, 9 games. He's just not good enough, in my opinion. He's just not good enough. Second, last year they had a very easy schedule. And they beat some really bad teams. They won 8 games last year. They beat Chicago in week 3, like early in Caleb's tenure, early in his season where they were really bad. Pittsburgh with Justin Fields, where they had to come back. They beat the Titans twice. They beat Miami without Tua at home, barely. They beat the Jets by 1 point. They beat the Patriots by 1 point in a game that I thought they should have lost. And then they beat Jacksonville with Mac Jones in overtime. Let me go through that again. Young Caleb Williams in week 3. The Steelers with Justin Fields. The Titans twice, the worst team in football. Miami without Tua. The Jets by 1. The Patriots by 1. And the Jags with Mac Jones. They're not going to have all those easy games again. In fact, their own division is going to be a lot more difficult. Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. Cam Ward in Tennessee. The Texans, who they lost to twice last year. They're going to be in a tougher division this year. And there's not going to be those easy picking games in the AFC this year. Right? Besides maybe the Jets, I kind of feel like the Raiders improved at the bottom of the AFC. The Patriots definitely improved. Right? Like, I don't really see a lot of easy wins. The Browns are still kind of a good defense. Maybe that's one you would include. But the Colts are just, they're not going to benefit from all these easy games. They're really not. So between their quarterback position, which is one of the worst in the AFC, and their schedule being a lot more difficult, I just don't see how they're going to be able to do what they did last year and win 8 games again. You know, looking at their schedule, they do play the AFC West. So they play the Chiefs, the Chargers. They do play the NFC West, it looks like. The 49ers, the Rams, the Seahawks, the Cardinals. They don't have any gimme games on this entire schedule. I mean, the weakest teams they play are in their division. Jacksonville twice, Tennessee twice. The Raiders are maybe one of the weaker teams they play. The Steelers, like, again, not a lot of easy games. The Falcons, the Dolphins, kind of in their same range of opponent. So, I don't know, man. I don't see how the Colts win 8 games. I really don't. There it is, guys. Thanks for watching. Those are the teams that I feel will regress in 2025 and be way worse than they were in 2024. If you enjoyed, subscribe. Don't be a jabroni. Gronk, spike the like button, and we'll see you in the next video. Check it out. Peace.